The Galactic Empire's live broadcast began without warning. Across thousands of planets under their dominion, screens flickered to life, showing rows upon rows of humans lined up, shackled, and surrounded by armed alien guards. The setting was cold and mechanical, a vast, steel platform extending across a barren landscape. The only sound was the eerie hum of the machinery that powered the gallows. No speeches. No explanations. Just a chilling, silent procession of doomed individuals. Humanity's heart stopped collectively. On Earth, billions gathered in horror, glued to the screens as the execution began. One by one, humans were marched forward and hanged by alien hands, their bodies falling limp as they swung lifelessly. There was no attempt to hide the grotesque details. Every death was captured in vivid clarity, the cameras zooming in on faces of defiance, fear, and anguish. The broadcast cut periodically to the Imperial insignia, a sharp reminder of who controlled the galaxy. As the executions continued, some humans screamed at their screens, others wept, and still others clenched their fists in rage. The pain was universal, spreading like wildfire. Children asked questions their parents couldn't answer, elders sat in silence, and leaders scrambled for a response. One woman, standing in the crowd of onlookers in London, collapsed to her knees as the face of her husband appeared on the screen. He had been captured during the Empire's raid on a human mining colony. Her screams pierced the silence of the room, but no one could console her. There was no solace, only anger and sorrow. In the Galactic Council chambers, the broadcast continued uninterrupted. Alien species of every kind watched from their high-tech seats, some bored, others indifferent. A few looked uncomfortable, but most accepted it as a necessary display of power. To the Empire, humans were insurgents, troublemakers who had dared to defy their authority. This was justice, or so they claimed. On the outskirts of the Sol system, in a hidden base deep within an asteroid field, General Marcus Darius watched the broadcast with a team of resistance fighters. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of monitors and the occasional suppressed sob. Darius stood motionless, his face hard as stone. He knew many of those being executed. Soldiers who had fought alongside him. Engineers who had built humanity's first starships. Ordinary citizens who had dreamed of freedom. A young lieutenant turned to him, her voice trembling. "General, what do we do?" Darius didn't answer immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the screen as the 10,000th human fell. He exhaled slowly, his hands gripping the edge of the console so tightly his knuckles turned white. "We make them pay," he said finally, his voice low but filled with fury. "We make the galaxy understand that humanity is not a species to be crushed." Elsewhere, the survivors of the massacre began sharing their stories. One man, covered in dirt and scars, spoke in hushed tones about escaping the execution. "They were like machines," he said, describing the aliens. "No emotion. No hesitation. They looked at us like pests to be exterminated." His testimony spread rapidly across human colonies and resistance networks, fueling the fire of rebellion. On Earth, President Eleanor Vasquez stood before a hastily assembled press conference. Her face was pale, her voice shaking but resolute. "The Galactic Empire has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. Today they showed their true face. They showed us what they think of humanity. But they have underestimated us. We will not forget. We will not forgive." The words echoed across Earth and its colonies, uniting humans under a shared rage. Ordinary citizens began preparing for war, some crafting crude weapons, others spreading resistance propaganda. Engineers worked tirelessly in underground bunkers to retrofit aging ships with stolen alien technology. Everyone had a role to play. But as humanity rallied, the Empire celebrated their victory. Imperial leaders convened on their flagship, a massive station orbiting a distant star. "The humans will learn their place," one alien commander said with smug satisfaction. "Their rebellion is over." On the contrary, it was just beginning. The Galactic Council chamber was vast and imposing, its towering walls adorned with banners of the member species that upheld the Empire's rule. Seated in a semicircle were representatives of dozens of alien civilizations, their expressions ranging from disdainful to indifferent as General Marcus Darius entered. He walked to the center of the chamber, his every step echoing in the cold, silent hall. The scars of countless battles marked his face, but his eyes burned with unyielding fury. The moment he began to speak, his voice cut through the room like a blade. 50,000 human lives, he said, his tone even but seething with restrained anger. 50,000 men, women, and children hanged in cold blood. Not for crimes, but to send a message. Well, hear this. Humanity has received your message, and we will not cower. We demand justice. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, some delegates exchanging amused glances, others ignoring him entirely. The Empire's ambassador, a reptilian figure draped in ornate robes, rose from his seat. His voice was laced with condescension. Justice, he sneered. Humans violated imperial law. Their punishment was both lawful and necessary. Perhaps you should focus on controlling your species rather than making baseless accusations. Darius's jaw tightened, but he did not falter. You call it law, I call it genocide. This council exists to maintain peace among the stars, yet you sit idly by while one of your own commits atrocities. If humanity's blood means so little to you, then perhaps none of your species are safe. A few delegates shifted uneasily, but the ambassador waved dismissively. Enough theatrics. Humans are a minor species, insignificant in the grand design of the galaxy. You're fortunate we allow you to exist at all. Darius took a step forward, his voice rising. Allow us? You took our worlds, enslaved our people, and now you butcher us like animals. But we are not broken. Humanity will fight, not just for our survival, but for the freedom of every species oppressed by your tyranny. His words resonated with a handful of the council members, their gazes softening. A younger delegate from a lesser-known species hesitated before speaking. If we ignore this, are we not complicit? If the Empire can do this to humans, what stops them from doing it to us? The ambassador glared, silencing her with a flick of his clawed hand. This council will not entertain the delusions of a rebellious species. Humans chose this path. They must accept the consequences. Darius looked around the room, his voice steady, but filled with contempt. Remember my words. Today you close your eyes to injustice. Tomorrow, you may find yourselves on the gallows. Without waiting for a response, he turned and left the chamber, his resolve unshaken. Back on Earth, Darius wasted no time. Underground bunkers buzzed with activity as resistance leaders gathered. Hollowables displayed maps of Imperial strongholds, supply routes, and weak points. The Council will not help us, Darius announced, his voice echoing through the room. We are alone in this fight. But we are not weak. We are human. The crowd erupted in determination. Engineers worked tirelessly to retrofit old ships with stolen alien technology, while scientists developed new weapons using whatever scraps they could salvage. Civilians volunteered in droves, offering their skills and resources. Across the colonies, whispers of rebellion turned into cries for war. Word of humanity's defiance spread like wildfire. On distant planets, humans in hiding began organizing. Resistance cells grew bolder, sabotaging Imperial supply lines and hacking communication networks. Darius's name became a rallying cry, his speeches broadcast across secret channels to inspire hope. Yet, the Empire was not idle. Fleet commanders issued orders for increased patrols, hunting down human settlements with ruthless efficiency. For every victory, humanity suffered losses, but they refused to surrender. The executions had sparked something the Empire hadn't anticipated: unity. In a darkened war room, Darius stood with his closest advisors, studying the latest reports. The Empire views us as insects, he said, his voice calm but firm. Let's show them what happens when they underestimate us. The plan was audacious. Humanity would strike at a key Imperial outpost, a heavily guarded facility vital to their operations. It was a gamble, but one they had to take. As the room erupted into strategic discussions, Darius allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. The faces of the 50,000 haunted him, but they also steeled his resolve. "We fight not just for revenge," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "We fight for a future where no species endures what we have." The first strike came like a thunderclap. Under the cover of a dense asteroid field, a fleet of retrofitted human ships emerged from the shadows, their hulls bristling with weapons scavenged and modified from destroyed Imperial vessels. The target was a supply outpost critical to the Empire's logistics, a seemingly impenetrable fortress guarded by a small fleet and advanced defense systems. Human ingenuity turned the tide. Using old mining equipment converted into electromagnetic disruptors, the Resistance temporarily disabled the outpost's shield grid. Within seconds, the human ships swarmed forward, their pilots navigating with precision honed from decades of surviving hostile conditions. The first barrage of missiles tore through the Empire's defensive lines, sending shockwaves through their fleet. Inside the outpost, Imperial officers scrambled to respond, their arrogance giving way to panic. They had underestimated humanity, assuming them incapable of anything more than minor resistance. Now, they faced an organized, relentless assault. On board the lead human ship, General Marcus Darius directed the attack with calm precision. "Focus on their command vessel," he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Cut off their leadership, and the rest will fall apart." A squadron of human fighters broke formation, weaving through enemy fire to target the Imperial flagship. Explosions lit up the battlefield as the fighters deployed unconventional tactics, detonating improvised charges and using debris as cover. Their maneuverability and unpredictability outmatched the Empire's rigid, formulaic strategies. The Empire's fleet crumbled under the onslaught. One by one, their ships were destroyed or forced to retreat. The outpost fell within hours, its remaining defenders surrendering as human soldiers stormed the facility. The Resistance claimed not just a strategic victory, but a treasure trove of supplies and intelligence. News of the victory spread rapidly, igniting hope across human colonies and even among other oppressed species. For the first time, the Empire's image of invincibility was shattered. Humanity had proven they could fight and win. In the aftermath, Darius addressed his forces. "Today, we sent a message," he said, standing before a cheering crowd of soldiers and engineers. "The Empire is not invincible. They are not untouchable. And humanity will not kneel." The Empire, however, was quick to respond. High Command issued orders for a massive counteroffensive, deploying entire fleets to hunt down the Resistance. Imperial propaganda labeled the humans as terrorists, warning other species against aiding them. But the cracks in the Empire's foundation had already begun to show. In the shadows, whispers of rebellion spread. A small group of alien diplomats, disillusioned by the Empire's brutality, reached out to Darius. They offered information and resources, risking everything to support humanity's fight. One of them, a slender insectoid with a translator device, spoke plainly during their clandestine meeting. "The Empire has ruled through fear for centuries. Your defiance gives others the courage to resist. We cannot fight openly, but we can help you survive." With this new support, the Resistance's capabilities grew. Engineers used alien technology to develop advanced weapons, while spies infiltrated Imperial ranks to gather intelligence. Humanity's rebellion was no longer just a desperate struggle, it was a coordinated uprising. But victory came at a cost. Every battle brought losses, and the Empire's retaliation was brutal. Entire settlements were wiped out, their inhabitants deemed collaborators. Darius bore the weight of every casualty, his resolve hardening with each report. In a hidden command center, he studied a map of the galaxy, his advisors discussing their next move. "The Empire is tightening its grip," one of them said. "If we don't act soon, we'll be cornered." Darius nodded, his gaze fixed on a single location. "Then we strike where it hurts the most. Their stronghold. Their symbol of power. If we take it, we shatter their control." The room fell silent as the enormity of the plan sank in. It was a bold, almost suicidal move, but no one questioned it. They had come too far to turn back now. As preparations began, Darius stood alone, looking out at the stars. The faces of the 50,000 executed humans flashed in his mind, their loss driving him forward. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about justice. It was about proving that humanity, despite being seen as weak and insignificant, could rise above even the most impossible odds. The final battle began with an eerie stillness. The Imperial stronghold loomed ahead, a colossal space station bristling with weapons and surrounded by an armada of warships. It was the heart of their power, a fortress thought to be untouchable. But humanity had no choice. Victory here meant not just survival but a chance to break the Empire's grip on the galaxy forever. General Marcus Darius stood at the helm of the Resistance's flagship, his face grim but resolute. Around him, a fleet of patched-together human ships waited, their crews ready for the fight of their lives. The plan was simple yet daring, a coordinated assault to breach the station's defenses and cripple its core systems. Every ship, every soldier, every ounce of humanity's strength was committed to this single, decisive strike. The attack began with a diversion. A squadron of smaller ships darted toward the fleet's flanks, drawing enemy fire. The Imperial ships moved to intercept, their formations tightening as they prepared to crush the perceived weak point. But this was exactly what Darius had anticipated. From the shadows of a nearby nebula, the main human fleet surged forward. Using their knowledge of Imperial tactics, they exploited gaps in the defensive line, targeting key cruisers with precision strikes. The modified human weapons, designed to pierce Imperial armor, proved devastatingly effective. Explosions rippled through the enemy ranks, and for the first time, the Empire's forces hesitated. Inside the stronghold, chaos erupted. Alarms blared as commanders barked orders, their composure cracking under the pressure of the unexpected assault. Imperial soldiers scrambled to man their stations, but the Resistance's infiltration teams were already inside. Using stolen codes and disguises, they had breached the station hours before the battle began. Led by a hardened squad of veterans, the infiltrators moved with ruthless efficiency, planting charges on critical systems and disabling security grids. They met fierce resistance, but their determination pushed them forward. For every human who fell, two more took their place, driven by the memory of those who had already been lost. On the battlefield, the tide began to turn. The Empire's superior numbers were slowly overwhelmed by the Resistance's relentless tactics. Darius's voice echoed across the comms, issuing commands with unwavering authority. Focus fire on their command ships. Cut off their reinforcements. We take the station or we die trying. The Imperial fleet's flagship, a towering dreadnought, became the next target. Resistance bombers swarmed it, evading anti-aircraft fire as they delivered crippling blows to its engines and weapon systems. The dreadnought's destruction sent a shockwave through the battlefield, both literal and symbolic. The Empire's forces faltered, their confidence shaken. Inside the stronghold, the infiltrators reached the core, a massive, pulsating reactor that powered the station and its defenses. The team leader, a grizzled soldier named Kale, activated the charges, his voice steady despite the danger. For the 50,000, he muttered before triggering the detonation. The explosion rocked the station, sending tremors through the battlefield. Power flickered, and the Empire's defensive systems began to fail. Sensing victory, the human fleet pressed the advantage, targeting the now vulnerable stronghold with everything they had. But the Empire was not defeated yet. Their remaining ships regrouped for a desperate counterattack, determined to protect their symbol of power. The final moments of the battle were a brutal, chaotic melee, with ships colliding and explosions lighting up the void. Darius's flagship took heavy damage, its hull breached in multiple places. Yet he refused to retreat. "This is our moment," he said, his voice filled with determination. "No matter the cost, we finish this." The Resistance's flagship led the charge, delivering the final blow to the station's central command hub. The stronghold erupted in a massive explosion, its debris scattering across the battlefield. The surviving Imperial ships retreated, their morale shattered. As the dust settled, the Resistance fleet regrouped, battered but victorious. Cheers erupted across the comms, but Darius remained silent, his thoughts heavy with the cost of their triumph. Thousands had died for this victory, and the war was far from over. In the aftermath, the galaxy watched in awe and disbelief. The Empire's strongest fortress had fallen, its invincibility shattered. Species long oppressed began to stir, inspired by humanity's defiance. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's grip on the galaxy wavered. Darius stood before his surviving forces, his voice steady but weary. "We have won a great battle today, but the war is not over. The Empire will come for us, but we will be ready. We fight not just for humanity, but for the freedom of all who suffer under their rule." This is only the beginning. As the fleet prepared to retreat into hiding, messages poured in from across the galaxy. Offers of aid, whispers of rebellion, and the spark of hope. Humanity's defiance had lit a fire that could not be extinguished. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it felt within reach.